keep investing, and it's very difficult. It's a very difficult task. In the OECD's analyses, we have found that after a year, in many of the countries that are member to this organization, only 50% of companies survive, of enterprises survive. Other countries that might have much more positive environments for these SMEs, these companies will keep on going. In Mexico, we're still halfway through. Less than 50% of enterprises survive after their first year. And this is important to reflect upon. This is the first point that I wanted to make in order to share with you the different elements for the discussion that you're going to be carrying out further on. But we must see as well how we can promote these entrepreneurial environments that are beneficial to all, but that could be focused also in promoting women. And regarding this, there's nothing different than the fact that we need a dynamic economy. We need an entrepreneurial environment that is competitive. We need market conditions that are appropriate, good access to financing, a good generation of knowledge and their diffusion, entrepreneurial skills, and an appropriate culture. Obviously, this is easier said than done. It almost seems like a national development plan. It's almost like we're saying, yes, you need to have a good economy. Oh my, what a great recommendation from the OECD. But yes, it's true. We need an economic environment to be favorable for our companies. And also, it needs to be favorable for risk-taking and for us to not fear failure. And this is something very complicated. We live in France. Our ambassador is here. And in France, people, when they fail, nobody takes the risks to take on these risks because failure is not well looked upon. But if we go to countries such as the United States, it's almost something great to do. Yes, I've taken 5 companies to bankruptcy, and I'm going for my 6th. And this is something very important because it has to do with how we influence people and how we create that environment in which we can start companies with a positive attitude. We can do all of this through public policies of entrepreneurship for SMEs, or indirectly through tax policies, educational and innovative policies, labor policies. Everything counts, as we have already said. But also, I want to mention the gender gap, and that's where I want us to focus on today, because we're not going to discuss the national economy. We're going to discuss how we can manage for women to feel more comfortable assuming these roles as entrepreneurs. We are going to start off with the topic of how the entrepreneurship is perceived in our cultures. Many times, taking risks, as I said, assuming a leadership role, having management skills, networks, these are matters that are more linked with male characteristics rather than female. Even when women start their own companies, they can be found in areas that have less income. Almost 70% of women in the OECD area start their companies up in the service sector, and in services that are usually linked to users and that generally generate less income than other types of companies. And so, when we have this entrepreneurial interest, we have to take a look at this matter on how to progress towards other branches. Which are the gaps and which are the elements that explain them? First, motivation. Motivation in the case of women, sometimes they're less ambitious. Women are usually less ambitious because the expectations for girls is that they don't have much ambition. And we have documented this in our PISA program that assesses girls and boys at age 15, 16. And when we ask girls who have had a good performance in math, if they're good in math, half of them acknowledge the fact that they are good, even though men, even when they're not good, they will say that they are. This lack of confidence is an important element that we need to tackle. And this evidently affects the confidence with which they carry out any entrepreneurship task. Secondly, regarding stereotypes, we tend to focus our girls' attentions in certain areas that don't necessarily lead to having the skills of managing or starting up a company. And that's why we took up an initiative with the Ministry of Education to start off STEM, Niñas Pueden, STEM, Girls Can. Because we said there might be many women mentors in Mexico, engineers, entrepreneurs, scientists, astronauts that could talk to our girls to transmit this message that it is possible to be ambitious, to have access to this kind of discipline. And we found in 2 weeks 70 Mexican women. It was very impressive what was done here in Mexico. Now we have some mentors that go to our girls, and if you listen to the girls they're talking to, when they say you can be an astronaut, you can be an engineer, you can build trains, and they just open up their eyes wide and with that expression saying, "Oh my God, you're talking to me." And so this is an action that is completely focused on our girls. And this leads us to another important matter, access to financing. When we launched the gender strategy in the OECD, we located it in 3 sectors: education, employment, and entrepreneurship. In education, I think everything has been very well mapped out, and I think women have made great progress in all of the OECD countries, including Mexico, now even going beyond the numbers for men when it comes to tertiary education. Employment, there are gaps, but there's much progress there. When it comes to entrepreneurship, we don't even have data. I think this is a very important lack of information. We need to know where they are, what their skills are, and how they can progress. But there's something that is very intriguing for me, which has to do with financing. Why women ask for less financing? And why do we give them less financing? And if they ask for less and we give them less, or if they don't ask it because we give less? This obviously has an impact on how they handle and manage their companies. The topic of financing is a very important one. I believe that, as I mentioned this morning, we made the launch of the scoreboard 2018, and the secretaries concluded that it was important not only to have access to financing, but also to have a very focused policy to not only get it to women, but also accompany it with other elements of support, of networking, of market access, and information that is vital for the growth of their companies. And I believe that there are some interesting examples. When we started our culture of microcredits, of microloans, and this was launched with the Opportunities Program in Mexico, it was said that this financing was going to be focused on women, and we're going to offer them to women because we think that maybe they'll be more careful in how to use their resources. Let me tell you that it was very impressive to interview Johannes Buse, who is the creator of the microcredit, and that currently serves 9 million people in Bangladesh. And what he said was, I'm going to give these loans to women because they're better payers. So if we have this information and we have these profiles, how can we take advantage of these characteristics that have more strength to manage to get women to have access to these loans? We need a better understanding of why women pay better. All of these different studies regarding microcredits have demonstrated it, and we have seen it in different programs for women as well. These are some of the considerations. It's not an isolated topic. The topic of women entrepreneurs is at the core of everything that implies gender matters. Everything that implies stereotypes, everything that has to do with patterns, with the expectations of what women should and shouldn't do, and of everything that our culture imposes upon us, and everything that we ask our girls to do or not do. And so I would like to conclude with this very important topic. It's very important to have these dedicated policies, better analyses, a greater knowledge of what's going on, of the environment, and it's very important to have the leadership of our different institutions and ministries that are leading the promotion of this type of policy to have this gender approach. I thank Secretary Guajardo and Secretary Gurria, who are here with us, and I hope that when we finish our debates here, we could have some solutions to some of the problems that we have mentioned here today, because they have been very well mentioned for a long time. I think it's about time that we achieve substantial progress. We have said it in all languages. Countries lose when they don't use the talent of their women. Societies lose when we have women who are submitted, who are underrepresented. And I believe that we have a responsibility to progress on this agenda, not only regarding entrepreneurship, but also a more balanced and human development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gabriela. It was really insightful, all the words, and I think it's going to inspire the hack of the policies today a lot. I would like now to introduce Mr. Angel Gurria to provide opening remarks for this event. Mrs. Gurria has been Secretary General of the OECD since 2006 and firmly established the organization as a pillar of the global economic governance, architecture, and reference point in the design and implementation of better policy for better lives. Secretary, your
This is something we presented today, financing of SMBs and financing of the business community. Well, this is generic, which means that this includes all women, businesswomen, of course, and entrepreneurial women, and governance for equality, gender equality. And this is done with the Mexican Women's Institute. The ABC of gender equality in education: aptitude, attitude, behavior, and trust. Those are some of the things we're talking about here today. And, well, this is entitled the disappeared entrepreneurs or businessmen. This means that we are recommending here how to incorporate a higher number of businessmen in society, but especially for more men and women to become entrepreneurs, and for them to aspire to be entrepreneurs. Yes, and there we have here as well another document on entrepreneurship, feminine entrepreneurship, how to go about having women become entrepreneurs. And this is something we've just published. It is fresh from the oven, and we're giving it to Secretary Guajardo here. And this has to do with the financial inclusion and entrepreneurial capacity of women. And he says Mexico, the participation of Mexico, this is something done especially for this document that I'm showing you here. And then after that, we also have something on the economic study of OECD in Mexico, and we are preparing the next version. But here we have, in this very particular edition or version of last year, we have a very important recommendation vis-a-vis how to promote entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship projects led by women. This is the commercial. Gabriela has already given us a lot of information on where we're at. And I also showed you some of the things that we're working on. And the truth is that we're enormously satisfied being able to use this forum the small, medium-sized companies. This is truly an event with 60 countries that are represented here. OECD has 35 members, and here we have from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, of course, etc., aside from the OECD countries. And we also have over 10 international organizations that are here with us working on this issue. And they all have within their working plans a project or an aspect or an institution or various institutions that have to do with the particularly a special focus on women and their entrepreneurial capacity and entrepreneurship in general. Let me tell you that what we do, as everything else we do, as everything that was mentioned today as SMBs, first of all, to see if there's something that deserves to be analyzed in depth or in greater detail. When we reach the conclusion that that's the case, then we start measuring this phenomenon, and then we start comparing it, and then we extract some conclusions, some analysis of those comparisons we make, and thus we turn this analysis into best practices so that they may be applied and serve as suggestions for better policies in different issues and topics. In this particular case, regarding the very special and specific topic of women and enterprises. Gabriela mentioned too a lot of examples. I have a lot more here in my cards and in my formal speech, where practically throughout countries there's been progress made on this issue, but it is quite clear that all these divisions, all these separations and divides, all these profound and deep distances that exist among or between rather men and women when we talk about not only in general, but also entrepreneurial capacity and credit access and financial access. Well, this is a problem throughout the world, but this is no consolation, of course, because obviously we have to approach it, address it, and solve it here in Mexico, because in Mexico the problem is still even more acute and more evident, certainly than in our colleague and sister friends of sister countries of the OECD. We're always saying that we are such a young country here in Mexico. We are so young, but as with anything else, we're not so young anymore. And we are not a country that can be simply just writing checks on their demographic dividend. What we have to do now is that in order for the country to continue growing and increasing its productivity, we have to incorporate all those that have capacities and competences to be incorporated in the labor market. And here we are talking about half of the population, potentially half of the labor force, and the entire world, but also in Mexico, women are the most important economic asset, but also the most underused economic asset. This cannot continue being that way if we want Mexico to move forward, progressing, even in this very difficult environment. So therefore, now let me have the privilege of introducing Secretary of the Economy, a champion in the cause of equality, of gender equality in Mexico. But he's also responsible for the economic promotion and the entrepreneurship promotion, also a champion of entrepreneurship and greater participation as entrepreneurial leaders. Mr. Secretary Guajardo, what a pleasure, sir. You have the floor. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We not only have the privilege of having the OECD General Secretary introducing you to an audience. I worked for him 10 years when he was Foreign Affairs Ministry. I was his employee. And there is no doubt I want to thank Gabriela Ramos for having this leadership in this convening process with parallel routes with the global ministerial meeting of ministers responsible for SMBs and micro companies as well. This is a great distinction from Mexico. This is fundamental, especially because, being sincere with you, the SMB topic in Mexico, it is truly something which is quite a recent issue, a recent topic. We started out with a discourse in the Fox administration with a micro pop and mom stores, and this was transformed, and we are going through this evolution through public policies. And it is exactly the public policies that have to adopt with great realism this challenge. We cannot be blinded. We cannot fool ourselves. We cannot deceive ourselves. When we talk about statistics of women's participation in the labor market, we say, well, look, this is really quite surprising. In the 60s and 70s, the participation in the economically active population was 15%, and now is 50%. Let us not fool ourselves. A participation in the labor market does not reflect empowerment of women. What this could be reflecting, however, is the reality of so many households who have heads of households who are women, and they have to support their children because their husbands left. Women who have to launch great efforts so that every day they can really make ends meet to educate their children to. And probably those statistics are reflecting an economic reality in terms of salaries so that we can have better well-being for children. Let us not fool ourselves. This is not empowerment. What we are now facing is how to go from the public political correct discourse. This was started by Fox, President Fox. Let us remember that. Those discourses, those speeches when he said the masculine and feminine way of talking to men and women. And this changed the discourse in Mexico. But going from the political correct discourse to reality of an effective public policy takes a lot of effort. And this has a lot to do with our cultural elements, with inertias, and also with our own life experiences in this process. We have to understand that assimilated is totally incomprehensible that we can be talking of this place and going with the President of Mexico to the bi-monthly meeting of what used to be the Businessmen Mexican Council with the representation of the 55 most important Mexican companies. And even that year, it was called the Mexican Council of Businessmen. We're talking about the 21st century. The president in that meeting said, I feel so funny here. This is the only public event when I cannot say ladies and gentlemen, only gentlemen. As of that observation, the council changed its name and is now as Mexican Business Council. And the first action was to invite one woman. And that's in English talking. This is not a sincere change of assimilation policy. And they invited our friend Blanca Treviño, a very important Mexican entrepreneur and businesswoman. And then the next year they said, let's send a more forceful message, a more convincing message. Now we have in this council Laura Zapata, Mrs. Barroso, and Blanca Treviño. Thus, little by little, we have to motivate these efforts, but we have to add public policy to them. Today, we are discussing with the entrepreneurial sector, with the business sector, not a legislation to make it more rigid or to make it mandatory for them to have women in their board meetings. But yes, for any company in the stock exchange, for it to be transparent and the number of women that are part of their boards. So with clear determination, very concrete determination, we can start changing the wheel of this mentality, of this mindset. This participation scheme, we see it in public policies towards the representation, electoral and social representation in our societies. When we arrived in this administration, when we started, if you talk about the Ministry of the Economy, 53% are women. But in the high-ranking places, only 12 women. And Deputy Secretaries only. Rocio Ruiz, who's here with us today, she represents 25% of the 4 Deputy Secretaries we have. Obviously, the determination of the electoral participation process has changed. I have been in the Chamber of Deputies in the lower house in the year 2000 and 2009. I remember the first discussions to expand the gender participation and how it was constitutionally mandatory to do this. I remember whenever we started debates, the question was, but where are we going to get the 50% of women candidates if there are not women that are well enough trained for going to politics? This is the chicken or the egg. If you don't give them opportunities, how are they going to get preparation in the Secretary of the Economy? We don't pressure, so there's opportunity from heads of departments so they can start growing. We cannot have more Rocios Ruizes to be deputy secretaries. This is something we have to break paradigms from. We have to break with the inertias and we have to transform reality. In the same case, and also the personal experience that I've had, we see it this way. And although Angel spoke about my commitment with public policies, this is not created simply by coincidence or political convenience of a public officials, created as part of the results of a life experience. I had a niece who studied economics. I don't know if this is good or bad, but she went to the Technological of Monterrey, and she started looking for a job in a job agency, an employment agency, and she looked at the offers she had in Monterrey. And the high-ranking executive levels in the most important groups of my home state, there are no important women at the high-ranking level. So my niece decided, the first one in the family, to come to Mexico City and to start working with a global company. She was the CFO at the Latin American level for Procter & Gamble. She was 33 years old. So those experiences are the ones that are really marking us. They really mark us. They make us reflect on our responsibility to make decisions that will really be affecting lives and will be creating public policies. In this sense, I believe that the discussion that you're going to be holding today, headed by Victoria Graham, who's directing the Facebook policy program, and Diana Rogel, who chairs CONAPYME in Salvador, Adriana Tortajara, thank you so much for being here, Venture Capital, thank you so much for being here, and also Tesh Trapse, who is Government Affairs, and together with the Secretary General from Turkey. Yes, thank you so much. Yasim Sevik, Secretary General. Thank you so much. But finally, on everything we have highlighted in terms of globalization, digitalization, interaction, we really have to land on those issues. The positioning of my boss, the President of Mexico, we clearly had an indication of a cross-cutting element in everything we do. And in the case of the Ministry of the Economy, we have two very clearly defined working lines. Cynthia Villarreal is here with us, and she is the head of the PRONAFIM service, and the FOMUR part, that's for women with high level of vulnerability, especially in the rural sector. Not only to train them, but also to help them, and so they can change their realities every day. INADEM, a clear specific bias in the assessment programs so that we can launch them in a very significant fashion, giving opportunities for entrepreneur women, not based on societies or corporations, because we know that they just write their names down so that they have more likelihood of succeeding, and they are always headed by men. This is for individuals to avoid that bias. That's the way it was in policies. When we increased the gender part, the husbands would say, my wife is going there, she has to resign, and I will be. This was in Congress. We have to do away with fiction. We have to avoid fiction. We have to back forceful actions. At the international level, in negotiations of international accords, we have included this issue very clearly. The Chilean president, when she she incorporated in the Pacific Alliance after she won the election. She asked us to transform the agreement to include a gender agenda in the Pacific Alliance. And she headed this initiative, and now we have very concrete, relevant commitments within this integration of Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. And today, in the NAFTA negotiations, we are trying to really talk to our friends in Washington to include also a gender chapter in the negotiating process, clearly identified, obviously to improve and enhance the quality of inclusions of trade and commercial agreements we're negotiating. Once more, yes, we cannot change reality as of trade policies or commercial policies. We can enhance the quality of agreements, but in the absence of the right public policy, we're not going to really make great progress. So the commitment has to be clearly defined. And in the other part of digitalization, well, this is a technological element that no doubt facilitates the inclusion aspect. It facilitates it because the traditional burden of women is unfortunately associated to co-responsibility. This is something we've all faced in different levels and aspects. The mother that has to open a little business to increase the family income, the mother that has to work here and there. And I think that today, ITs, in spite of the bias against women, it can be an instrument of change in favor of this integration. Thank you very, very much, and I hope you have great results in your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, three of you, to be with us today. It was a honor, and it's a honor, and really, I think it's a context where provide insights, where provide such high agenda for all of us, not only for men or for women, for both working together. Thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure to talk with you today.
I'll be back.
Gracias. As I mentioned before, now we have the second part of this event, that is the big panel, to speak, to talk, to discuss about the benefits of digitalization and globalization for women entrepreneurs. So I'm going to invite the experts. So when you are coming to the stage, I'm going to introduce each of them. So first of all, help me to welcome Mrs. Yesim Sevig, an entrepreneur herself, who has been the Secretary General of Turkey's Women Entrepreneur Association since 2009. She's also actively involved in the work at the Women's 20, which is the official G20 dialogue with women NGOs, female entrepreneur associations, and scientists pushing forward women economic empowerment. Directly from Mexico, Mrs. Adriana Tortajada, Venture Capital and Mezzanini Fondo de Fondos. Since July 2016, Adriana has been head of the Venture Capital and Mezzanini team. Over the past decade, she has been a leader in portfolio management and public multilateral fundraising in Mexico. Next, we have Mrs. Victoria Grant. She's the Director of Policy Program at Facebook. She oversees a team that is responsible for designing, developing, and launching global programs that leverage the extraordinary reach of Facebook to drive economic growth and digital skills, increase civic engagement, and amplify important issues. Mrs. Ileana Rochelle from El Salvador, President of the National Commission of Micro and Small Enterprise. She covers the countries of the Central America Integration System region. Among many other roles, she has also served as president of the Trust for Development of SMEs. It's a multi-sector bank. And a director of the board of directors of Banco Hipotecario de El Salvador. And last but not least, Mrs. Paige Fetcher is the director for Global Governance Affairs and Public Policy at Dell. Paige currently manages the Massachusetts and Latin America portfolio, Prior to that, Pace served for 4 years at the U.S. Treasury, where she worked on the bilateral economic relationship between the U.S. and China. As I mentioned before, the idea now is to discuss among us all these benefits about digitalization and globalization, the challenge. So I'm going to interview each of them, and also we are going to have time to open to the public to make questions, so think your questions too. Of course, the questions could be addressed in English or in Spanish. It's nearly the same for all of us. For her, it's going to be in English, but we can translate. And, or if someone talking Turkish, we can do it too. So I'm going to sit down there to talk with all of them. As I mentioned, this idea is a discussion panel, but we are going to go in order, because one of the things that we want more, and we want with Paige more than other thing, is to dedicate a lot of time to this policy hack. This is a special hackathon, the first time that we are going to do a hackathon in policy. So we are going to talk, we are going to inspire, but we need a lot of time for that. So I'm going to try to moderate the talk today. So, Jassim, I would like to start with you, if you want. Talking about a little what happened in your country with women, and with this incredible program that you developed in the country about how to help women entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we would like to know is the barriers that they have, because they develop a program that is online, so you have more people that could take it, but in the other side, we know that sometimes to access to internet or access to online, or sometimes the barrier are not internet, are others. So I would like if you can share with us the story of this program and the success and the not success too.
Thank you. Thank you, Connie. Hello, everyone. It's a great energy, full of women and few men. How many men? Great. Raise your hands. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the OECD and INADEM for bringing this very important issue of women entrepreneurship and their inclusion to the global economy within the ministerial meeting. The more we talk about, I hope that we are going to have more progress. And before answering your question, maybe briefly I can tell about our association. I flew 26 hours yesterday to come and join you. So you might be wondering, who is this from Turkey? Who is Kagidar? We are a 15-year-old association. I'm the Secretary General. I was an entrepreneur for 14 years. And like Ms. Ramos, I was not afraid to be an entrepreneur. I bankrupted twice. I had 6 different companies. And since 2009, I work with the women entrepreneurs at Kagidar. Kagidar is a non-profit civil society organization. We are the most influential organization in Turkey, nationwide, but we work globally. We have an office in Brussels for policy and legislation on women entrepreneurship. We have representatives in US and China. And our members are all women entrepreneurs. We have around 300 members, and they generate, let's say, €2 billion annual turnover in Turkey. Our main mission is to develop and support women entrepreneurship in Turkey, but we strongly believe in the correlation between education, employment, and entrepreneurship. So we built all our strategies accordingly. As I said, we are active globally, and we have offices in different countries. We are a United Nations ECOSOC member, And in 2015, during Turkey's G20 presidency, W20 engagement group was established and Kagidar was assigned to run the presidency. We are still active in the policy discussions of W20, Germany, China, and now Argentina. And thanks to Mr. Gurria, Secretary General of OECD, he came to the launch of W20 back in 2015. And Ms. Ramos, she's a great supporter of W20. She's like the ambassador of women in G20 for us. Thank you again, once again. And the main objective of W20, the main target is, in fact, back in 2014, G20 leaders, for, of course, economic growth and sustainability, they signed a declaration on closing the gap between men and women in the participation to economy, 25% by year 2025. That was in 2014, 4 years ago. In Turkey, we only progressed 1.3%. So there's not much time to go till 2025. We have to work more. So whatever we do in Turkey, our strategies are parallel to G20 commitments, like 3 more million in the economy. So I thought that was brief, but sorry, maybe it took me long. To come back to your question about women on the digital platform. Yes, digitalization is a big opportunity. There are big challenges. I will not tell the statistics in Turkey, but in Turkey we look at the women entrepreneurship as a job creation, not for the self-employed. So among 1,500,000 companies, there is only 115,000 women-owned businesses. And 30% of them are digitalized. So there's a big potential. Kagidar has a branded training to establish and to grow the businesses. These trainings we have been giving since 2004, but they are very limited. So face-to-face trainings, you can reach very limited amount of women. So we decided to go online, and we created the Kagidar Compass. But it is part of a macro approach to women's digitalization. Compass is just a tool that we have created. It is more like a experimental platform. It is not standard classic learning platform. And also we have the academic trainings as well. But it is not easy to have women access the platform. I mean, it's not very easy to keep them on the platform and complete the trainings. So what we do is we still go. There are 81 cities in Turkey, so we go to cities, we organize offline seminars. We have created the portal for all the women business associations in Turkey, and we put carrots. The little carrots, like if you finish your training on the portal, then you can get an advantage from the Credit Guarantee Fund, because this is. We all know the challenges for women entrepreneurship. It is not only for Turkey, it's all the same. Lack of networking, lack of role models, access to markets, access to finance. So whatever we do in the digital world, we are trying to find a solution for all of these challenges. So for the women who finish the trainings online, we have the carrots for access to capital, and as well we had a protocol with one of the major online retail group. If you complete your trainings, you can get a free marketplace on the internet for 1 year. And digitalization is globalization as well. So we are running programs with international e-trade platforms like Alibaba.com and Compass. We are talking with the government to have affirmative action for women on the digital world and going digitally global. I had so many other points, but I know that we have limited time. Thank you.
And it's incredible how when we talk about digital, we talk about offline too, no? This is necessary. Thank you very much. I'm going to fly to the other, from Turkey to El Salvador, if Ileana wants. The commission that Ileana leads helps entrepreneurs and promotes especially women in innovation, in entrepreneurship, and internationalization, that we start to talk about that, and this is not the easy part. Sometimes we can grow in our own markets, but it's difficult to escalate to go to other markets. So, Ileana, which are the most important challenges to go abroad with a local product or with not a local product, but which are the challenges? What are the cases of success that you have? What can you share as a best practice from El Salvador?
Okay, buenas tardes a todos, a todas.
Good afternoon to all. It's an honor for me to be here with you today and share the experience of El Salvador. El Salvador is the smallest country of the continent. We are in Central America, but I would like to highlight, first of all, before answering that question, that the National Commission for Micros and Small Enterprises is regulated and responds directly to the President of the Republic. And from the presidency, we have an explicit mandate to include women in the design of public policies. And within that framework, I would like to highlight that from CONAMIPE, we created the program of female entrepreneurship. I want to leave this with the organizers, the systemization of all of the intervention that we have developed in order to tend to women entrepreneurs. And I would also like to highlight that when we started this in 2010, the questions that we made were why a specific program for women entrepreneurs if entrepreneurs are men and women? They're doing the same thing, they're developing businesses. I would like to highlight that it's not true. Women have to face a much more complex context, a context that requires them to keep developing their traditional roles marked by society on top of them being entrepreneurs. Whether it is an employment in the government, in an international company, in a multinational enterprise, we never leave our homes behind. And so in that context, we must take into account that we need to differentiate between men and women that dedicate themselves to entrepreneurship. I would also like to share that we have systemized this route, and this has allowed for us to think about these very particular challenges on how a woman projects herself to intervene in national, regional markets and world markets. And I think that an analysis of the culture of how we do business as women should prevalence. I would like to point out that for us, it's very satisfying to tell you that in the last 7 years, we have dealt with over 37,000 women that have gone through our training programs, and that this has allowed for us to give them a qualitative jump in their entrepreneurship. And this public policy has this approach of dealing with the greatest number possible of women entrepreneurs. We're talking about in El Salvador, the fact that in El Salvador, 64% of micro and small enterprises are led by women. And within that framework, we created this analysis that allowed us to design specialized training courses, and we took the task upon ourselves to consult with different women in order to help them regarding marketing matters or export matters or production matters, but also give them an approach specific to their context as women. When a woman wants to export, the first thing she asks herself is, how is the market? What is the market asking for? And this leads me to answering the question. We have seen cases of successful women who are exporting, but that had to go through a series of filters and processes so that their product could be a part of chains belonging to Walmart or international companies or export to Germany. It can be done. But what we have discovered is that nowadays, this is a new world for women entrepreneurs at the level of micro and small enterprises. In this context, I would like to point out that last year we launched the Diploma course for women entrepreneurs on digital marketing, because it's a fact that in order to be able to export, first of all, they need to get to know all of the forms that an external market demands. A course such as this allowed us to discover the potential of these technological tools and what they mean for these women to do business. We train them, and at the end of this training process, at the end of the year, I am pleased to say that it was incredible to get to know the results that these women had. First of all, because throughout the course in digital marketing, they were practicing directly in their companies to discover their business's potential. And one of them went from 0 sales in a regional market to selling $70,000, $100,000 using her own entrepreneurial Facebook page, doing everything online and being confident about carrying out economic transactions with credit cards and things like that. All of these elements seem quite simple, but for women that are of a certain age who have an enterprise, the lack of digital knowledge is very high. In El Salvador, only 26% of people have access to internet and use a computer regularly. And of that percentage, the percentage of women is quite low. And so this established a great challenge of how to continue with these processes of training regarding digital marketing, but also regarding the challenge of teaching the basic ABCs of how to use the internet. For many women who are at a certain age where they never had access to a machine or internet when they went to school, we have seen women scared of touching the keyboard to do business. But after 2 or 3 months, these women are working with their own lines, their own accounts, their own mechanisms. I'm going to tell you a very brief story about a woman who, when she was interviewed about this process, she was asked, "Where is your business?" In the best freeway of the world, in the internet. So the fact that they are able to incorporate all of these elements sets a challenge for us to keep progressing in this process of digital teaching, which is going to be very important, especially if we take into account that one of the big challenges that we are facing is to manage this, to achieve this empowerment of women, because many of these women who own their businesses are managed by their sons or husbands, and maybe they don't truly see the whole potential and all the benefits that these enterprises or companies give them. I had a very long presentation to share with you, but I'm not going to go that deep into it. But I think it's worth mentioning this story this way. and tell you that this program of female entrepreneurship, the methodologies that we have used, have been set into practice, have been used in practice in a national women program where we only tend to women in certain circles. This is coordinated by the Ministry of Social Inclusion. The program of female entrepreneurship is also developed in the centers of the service centers for small and micro enterprises. And we have also had to start setting the importance of having a gender approach of our work with these companies. We also developed what we call the model of women and business. Every year, women are graduating in El Salvador, and it fills me with satisfaction to see a growth that is substantial for these women. I'm pleased to say that this methodology of work, of interventions, is available for any country who wishes to use it through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through CONAMIPE as well. I have here a copy with me. Here you can find all of the systemization of this experience. There's videos, testimonies of women who have gone through these training courses and that are proof that it is possible to make changes and transformations that are essential for the work regarding the economic empowerment of women. I reiterate, there is a governmental commitment on these matters. We are betting on contributing to one of the sustainable development goals projected at a worldwide level with this intervention regarding women in rural and urban areas. So, to answer your question, I must reiterate that the challenge is for women to discover the potential markets out there because they have little access to information of what consumers are asking for in Germany, in Europe, in Asia, in America itself. And so we need to get that information closer to them so that they can be successful with their exports. I'm handing this over to you so that you can have all of the documents.
Thank you very much. And very related what she was talking about, I would like to do my next question to Victoria. Because we were talking about education and confidence, about how confident an entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur feels. Facebook has a survey, a monthly survey about the future of business that runs between SMEs that are running in a digital area. So they ask them how they see or what are the outlooks for the future of their business. So one of the findings was about the solo entrepreneur. No, this woman entrepreneur that doesn't have an employee. It's self-employed at the end, no? And so in this case, and with all the information that you receive in this survey was done between the OECD and the World Bank with Facebook. I was checking that, it was really interesting. So with all the information, how do you think policymakers can help women entrepreneurs to be more confident to go digital? What can they do? What is your perspective about that?
Sure. We are all here because the economic imperative is clear. We know that when we harness the untapped potential of women entrepreneurs, we see job creation, we see economic growth, and we see a diverse small business community. And we also all know, and we've been hearing today, that women entrepreneurs continue to experience persistent barriers to being able to grow and start a business. Facebook is here today because we see tremendous opportunity, and we've seen this during our surveys that we've done with a lot of women entrepreneurs. Many of us experience Facebook as a place to build community, as a place to connect with family, with friends, to connect over shared interests. But what many of us don't know, and the reason we're excited to be here today, is that it's a place for small business. It's a place for these small businesses who have been the anchors of their offline communities to now come online and build community online. And in fact, today we have 70 million small businesses on Facebook, and 40% of those 70 million small businesses are women-owned businesses. And the good news there is that we see that number of new women-owned businesses on Facebook growing by 60% year over year. So we continue to see growth in women-owned businesses. And the good news also is that people are supporting businesses on Facebook. So of the 2 billion people who are on Facebook all over the world, 1.7 billion of those 2 billion are connected to a small business. And 1 billion people are connected to a small business outside of their country. All of this matters to us so much because what we found is that businesses that come onto Facebook and that use digital tools, 86% of them say they were able to attract more customers. 68% say that they were able to grow revenue. 77% say that they were able to export more. And so we want to partner with the private sector and the public sector and all of you to create more on-ramps for women to access digital tools, not just Facebook, but across the internet. One program that we're excited about that, again, we are looking for more partners within this room, from experts to academics to other entrepreneurs and organizations to partner with, is a program that we call She Means Business, or Ella Hace Historia. We launched it in 2016 during International Women's Day, and to the point that you've been making and others have been making about the importance of creating programs dedicated for women specifically, this program is about 3 things. It's about celebrating women entrepreneurs, it's about inspiring them, it's about creating networking opportunities, but even more than that, or in addition to that, it's about giving women businesses tools. We've trained 42,000 women in person in 17 countries and 50,000 more online. And again, we're looking for additional partners for this program. The one other thing I'll leave you with is that in the survey that we did recently, small businesses say, 76% of them actually say that when they're thinking about potential job candidates, they are looking for candidates that have digital and social media skills, and that having those skills is as important to them as where a candidate went to school. And so as we think about all of the points that have been made today about educating women as well, it's not just educating them in these advanced coding classes, it's also about teaching these middle skills, these digital skills that's going to be so important in terms of feeding the demand that small businesses have, but also creating the future workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. And about tools, I want to ask Adriana, when we are talking about solo entrepreneurs, sometimes we don't talk about raising money from venture capitalists. But if you are talking of a startup, that is the name of an entrepreneur who is based on technology, who wants to raise money from venture capitalists, and this is a trend in all the countries to have their funds, the funds that are for capital, risk capital, that is called is venture capitalists, and it's something that Adriana knows more than everyone in this room. When you are talking to support high potential entrepreneurs, many studies and studies that the OECD did says that when you have a male entrepreneur and a female entrepreneur and all the rest of the things being equal, the investors tend to give the money, give the funds to male more than women. When you listen to that, you started to going, oh, okay, everything is going well with digitalization and all the things, and what happened in this part. So my question is, what was your experience? How is changing? How necessary is to have not only women's entrepreneurs raising money, but also women in the other side of the business giving, creating funds. So what can you say about that, Adriana?
Oh my God, that's a long question, a deep question. Thank you very much for inviting me here to share with great colleagues at the panel and my great previous colleagues at the Ministry of Economy and the National Entrepreneurship Institute I love you all. I miss you guys. But let me tell you a little bit, just a little bit about the public policy in Mexico, because actually Fund of Funds is a successful story on a public policy field. So Mexico launched a Fund of Funds back in 2006. So we were founded by the National Development Banks. So we were creating like a pilot, trying to, improve the best and common practices of the industry and trying to create a professionalized and sophisticated team that manage private equity funds. And of course, to encourage and foster the private equity industry in Mexico and in the region. So remember that we're the second largest economy in Latin America. So a step away from Brazil and all the challenges in the different languages, and there's a closed economy, Mexico is the most, inspiring and great, economy. And there's a lot of opportunities. So we're a young firm, if you can imagine, just 11 years old. So we were founded with all the legacy portfolio that the national development banks were doing directly, direct investments in back 70s. So the national development banks really helped to create the industries in Mexico. So now the private equity, and I'll go back to venture capital and talking about entrepreneurship, but was another industry trying to support and add value to the economy growth. And we were founded with a commitment of 250 million USD. So can you imagine, recently, we are celebrating our 11 years old. We are almost, ending to call that money, that commitment, and now we have more than 1.5 billion USD in assets under management. So that is a successful public policy. And internally, we have 3 different business units. Of course, private equity is the largest one that also manages pension funds money with a public, stock of change and different instruments and different vehicles. I'm the head of the venture capital and mezzanine business unit, and we recently launched in 2013 the infrastructure and energy arm. So all of the business units were focused on trying to promote what was already there, to co-invest with funds, with professional managers, and try to encourage them to take more risk and go deeper in our ecosystem. So talking about the venture capital business unit, it was more, to create the ecosystem and to link all the actors. Because as the Secretary Guajardo mentioned, this is not a new history. Mexico has built for entrepreneurial people, has been built, mainly. So the only thing we're missing is, one, link the actors, create a platform to give visibility to the ones that were leading, the businesses and taking all the risk. And of course, talking about gender and different initiatives, put it on the spot and put it like a role models. Because there wasn't any woman lead businesses role models in our agenda. So our challenge talking about, venture capital, how to really raise money in this industry, how to encourage our young ladies and women and new generations to really take the risk and become a high-impact entrepreneurs. It's so hard. It's even hard for a man and a woman. But just think about the impact to support women. And I'm pretty sure Gabby mentioned that in her opening remarks. And when you support women, you are supporting the economic growth. We are the leaders. We are the ones that lead the economy, mainly. We take the decision at home. We take decisions, through different initiatives. We normally take more risk. We take a lot of roles, and we have many different hats and caps in the society. So thanks to the innovation and all this revolution of the 4.0 industries with the digitalization and the digital economy, we have a chance to really showcase what we're capable to do. And talking about the venture capitalist world, it's true there is still a gap between the men and women lead businesses, but it's not because they are not into it. Because I'm gonna share some data, because I'm in love about hard data. And Rosanna will tell you about it. I'm really in love about that. But I just was reading one study that OECD launched in 2016 that is called Entrepreneurship at a Glance. And it's talk about, the lack, of course, all the roadblocks that still are in the, entrepreneurial field, mainly for women. But the main area two are financing and education, as Gabby mentioned. So I don't want to repeat the Gabby words, but the lack of the component makes that out of the 58 billion US that the venture capital industry invests last year, only 1.4 billion reach woman-led companies. So while female-led businesses are increasingly being funded, and now we have a lot of rates, and access to capital for female entrepreneurs is far from reaching parity. But let us put on the table that talking about the gender gaps and the gender issue and all the challenges is one thing of the equation, but the other one is try to really, be on the spot, take the risk, lead the initiatives, and present and pitch and be there and improve your network and improve the way that you sell yourself. Sometimes we are afraid to sell ourselves. So I need to speed it up. So I just want to finish my comments that we need, talking about public policy, there's a lot of efforts that have been done, not only in Mexico and only the emerging economies. So we need to articulate those programs, to articulate all the actors in the ecosystem, the government, the private sector, of course the academia, the civil society and entrepreneurial community. So we need to link everyone. And of course, don't forget to start with empowering and inspiring and educating women and young girls. Because we need to create the next generation that it's used to use these digital networks, to be in the digital economy, to write about the lessons learned, to speak about their failures and don't be ashamed of it. We are not perfect, ladies. We are, we have permission to fail. And we just have to push up, give back, and start to create more value to where our society, our communities, our businesses. So I think that's really important. The venture capitalists are pursuing, opportunities to increase the returns. And if the woman entrepreneurs double the digits, the business led by women, create more than 60% of more value than the businesses led by men, guys, the investors are ready to invest in there, but we need to showcase. We need to have more entrepreneurs in business led by women in all the panels and in all the platforms. That will be my comment.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you very much. Paige, you are the last, and now you need to explain all the hacks, so you are going to have a lot of time. We are running out of time a little, so my question from you is related with the research, because you make a lot of research about women entrepreneurship, and you have an index, a city index, that is very incredible index, where how much the city can engage potential high entrepreneurs, women in the city. So it's wonderful. So there is, what do you learn about that? And what do you learn about, we know that technology is critical, but how critical it is, and how critical it is to grow outside our own country, the same as I asked to Elena. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I'm going to try and make this quick because I'm more excited to get to the policy hack. But before I get started, can I see with a show of hands how many female entrepreneurs we have in the room right now? Can we please give them a round of applause? Because these ladies are going to change the world with their ideas. So I'm so glad we're here. And yeah, I think that we can think about technology in two ways, right? That sort of is displayed through our We Cities report. And we can think about it at the individual level, and then we should also be thinking about it in regards to the public sector and what they're doing. And just some background on the We Cities report. We basically took quantifiable metrics that we could use to assess environments on how well they attract and support women entrepreneurs. And we took those metrics, we applied it to 50 cities across the globe as a way to assess their environments and how well they're supporting our female entrepreneurs. And this exercise wasn't really to provide accolades to the places that were doing a great job, but rather to really draw out best practices that we could take and apply in other places. And then also, because it had descriptive metrics, you could really look at the breakdown and analysis of a city and say, if you really focus on improving lower technology costs and lower market costs, you are going to dramatically improve your environment for your female entrepreneurs. So the metrics can be broken down basically into three main pillars: capital, markets, and technology, because technology is so crucial, not only moving forward for entrepreneurs, but also getting us to where we are today. And we can think about it, like I said, at the individual level, really leveraging technology for the individual female entrepreneurs. Utilizing technology can really help an entrepreneur address some of the challenges that we face, like work-life balance, access to finance, being able to connect, find that community, resources, coaching, all of that can be done through technology, right? And then thinking about it on how it applies to the public sector, and it's not how the public sector is leveraging technology, but rather how they're thinking about it, right? They need to be developing policies that create that environment that really support and help our women entrepreneurs thrive. And these can be things like connectivity, accessibility to internet, to social media, making sure our women entrepreneurs have access to all the information and data that they need to get done what they're doing. And of course, the cost of technology, right? If you're getting started and these entrepreneurs don't have a steady revenue stream, the cost of technology can't like break their bottom line. So they need to be able to have access to the internet and the connectivity. So kind of coming to the other side of the coin and technology and how it's playing into entrepreneurship, because technology is growing so rapidly and changing quickly, it's also going to be creating a lot of new market opportunities for entrepreneurs. And in the public sector, a lot of governments are shifting their focus towards digital cities efforts. And this is an effort that's going to rely heavily on our entrepreneurship community to provide those innovative solutions. And as we move to those efforts, for the sake of this talk, I think it's the government's responsibility to go out of their way to find those female entrepreneurship communities to make sure that they are a part of the conversation and they are a part of the solution too, right? And it's easy to grab the first idea that comes by, but making sure that we are creating a level playing field when it comes to these public sector efforts and engaging our women entrepreneurs is an important thing. And so technology is crucial at all stages of development, but it's not just the fact that technology exists, but it's how we're leveraging it, and it's how we're using it, and it's how our public sector is creating that environment to really support our female entrepreneurs to really thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Because of time, we are not going to open now questions. You are going to have time because the panelists are going to be here. I'm going to ask you to explain the policy hack, I think. And for my conclusion for these panelists, we have a special moment. It's like the crucial moment. The moment is there. Sometimes, as Charlie Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, always says, raise your hand. Don't be afraid of that. Mathematics, I'm good in mathematics. Okay, I'm good. And raise your hand, and it's the moment to take our place, because we have a place, as the same men have. I think together we can do a lot. And the technology is a challenge for all of us. It's not important the gender. So we need to raise the hand and be aware of all the initiatives that we have around. Thank you very much, and it's all yours. It's your moment.
It's time for the best part of the evening. So the policy hack that we're about to get started with, this is a Dell initiative that we have taken globally. We actually had a policy hack here in Mexico City last August. But basically what we're going to do is everybody who is participating in this policy hack, we are going to have you stand up, not yet, and we're going to place you in random teams with people that you don't know. In fact, you're not allowed to be sitting next to the person that you're sitting with now. Okay, so we're going to put you together on random teams, and we are going to give each of you, there'll be 5 teams, we'll give each of you a different policy theme that you're going to hack. So you will have an hour to work with your team to come up with a tangible solution that could be a project, program, or policy that's going to address this thematic issue. And all of the issues we're hacking on today are issues that we're facing as female entrepreneurs. And just for logistics, the back 4 tables and this table right here on the left are going to be our hacking tables. This one right here in the front will be only English speaking. So if you want to be on an English team, we'll go here. And can I have Marcella, Chris, and Christina raise your hands? This is my dream team. If you guys have questions or assistance, they will also be here to help you. But basically, the teams are going to have an hour to come up with your tangible solution. At the end of that hour, we are going to have a panel of fantastic judges, and you're going to come up and pitch them the idea that you came up with. Kind of like Shark Tank, but a little less scary, okay? And you're going to have 3 minutes to pitch the idea, and then the judges are going to decide who our top 2 winning ideas are. I won't get into the prizes now. That's your job to explain. But let's go ahead, get up, and get in our teams and get to work. No, when he speaks though, he sets the bar like here, and I'm still like right